All right. I mean, welcome, folks. This is the 16th or 17th one. I'm a little out of count now of our the BDCC's Business Resiliency webinar. It's October 23rd, I think. Yep. October 23rd. And today we're going to be joined in a few minutes at 2:30 by Joan Goldstein from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to talk about the expanded Restart Vermont program that's recently been announced and opened up. So I'm just going to scan the participant list to see if we have any representatives with us. I do see Laura. Laura, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything you'd like to share with us as your role as a representative?
I would say that the Deerfield Valley Fiber has started a newsletter, and folks can read more about the process and how to be involved in that. And that information will be coming out. It went out through Wyndham Regional, it'll be out through BDCC, and folks can sign up to stay apprised of that information.
Great. So that's the Deerfield Valley Communications Union District? Is that the
Yep, which is the district for the entire county.
Great. All right.
They're up to 17 towns, I think.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. All right, I'm going to share my screen because I think before Joan joins us, well, no, I'm not going to share my screen. I am going to now put Adam on the spot to talk about the REVTA program and any updates that might be relevant for that program.
Sure. So just as a refresher, the REVTA program is the technical assistance program. So that's being offered across the state in a variety of different ways. So the RDCs of Vermont in each of the regions are the access point for this. So going to vermonteconomicdevelopment.com and you can learn more about the program. The interest in this program was extremely robust in the very early days, and many of the regions, including our region, quickly came to capacity for the available dollars. So it looks as if, and we'll know for certain, maybe today, if not early next week, that there'll be another tranche of funding coming into this statewide, about $600,000 or $700,000 coming in for technical assistance. So that'll be distributed across the state again. So right now we have a queue for the Wyndham region. We have a queue of folks who've applied and been told that they would be admitted in should more funds become available. So that once we confirm the funds availability, that will be happening. And then it's going to be a real push to get these projects in scope of works. So what is the actual product they're going to be receiving and from whom? What service, what technical assistance, and ensuring that those contracts are completed successfully, ideally by December 4th. There may be for the second tranche a little wiggle room for a few days past that. But when you throw in Thanksgiving holiday in between now and then, and the time it takes to communicate to get things moving, it's going to be tight. So the message for everyone here is if you've applied, you're going to be hearing from Gabriel. If you haven't applied, it's still worth taking a few minutes to register on vermonteconomicdevelopment.com for a few reasons. It's quick. It will show continued demand. There may be other funds moving around at the very end to go to areas that have excess demand and lack of the funding. And it's going to hopefully show increased need for the region. And if we go into additional federal or state programs in the coming year, this will support the need for that. So it's important that even if you don't get funded in this round, if you take a few minutes, register as a provider or register as a business, that would be great. So Gabriel, I don't know, you probably have some guidance on what to do and how to do it.
Sure. So thank you, Adam. The easiest way, because of how tight the timeline is right now, the easiest way to get through this process as quickly as possible is to, if you're either applying as a business or you're reaching out to a business owner who may benefit from the program, is to take a look at the registered vendors that are already on the website, connect that potential client to a vendor, and have them come into the program with, you know, as close to about half of the process complete already, so that, you know, a lot of days are used up trying to pair clients with the appropriate technical assistance provider for them. So if you are, you know, another service provider or another economic development person in one capacity or another, please just take a little bit of time to try and take care of those earlier steps with a client that you may be bringing on board. And then that'll just relieve some time for me to push the scope of work through as quickly as possible through the approval process. So, you know, let's say if businesses were to submit a proposal by October 30th or, you know, November 1st, they would effectively have only the whole month of November to accomplish all the work they need to, that is spelled out in the scope of work contract. So we are on a tight time schedule. So yeah, I think.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Gabriel. Like I said, before I toss it to those folks, I'm going to share my screen. So what I wanted to try to do before Joan joins us is show you the calculator that the expanded program recommends you use. I think you have to use it before you start the application process. Can you see my screen? It should start with a section called Financial Relief Inputs.
Yes.
Yes, great. All right, I'm going to do this quick because I think I only have 5 or so minutes. So here, it's just an Excel spreadsheet, and it's really fairly, let me get that out of the way, fairly straightforward and simply designed. So you're going to start by entering any relief that you might previously have received from the various programs. So this first one's the PPP program, and I'm just somewhat pulling numbers out of the air. The next one is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Grant. So that's not the loan, but the grant, and that could potentially go up to 10,000, but basically it equaled the number of full-time equivalents that you had. So for this business, I'm just going to say 2,000 because there's 2 full-time equivalents. Prior economic recovery grant. So that's from round 1. If you received a Restart Vermont recovery grant, I'm going to call that 9,600. And then you need to start entering, as we're all probably familiar with, within the covered period, which is March through September, your 2019 gross sales, and then actually technically the covered period that the March through September 2020. So just bear with me while I enter some figures. And I'm just going to keep this even across the board. And then in 2020, the business suffered a 50% decline in sales. Of course, somebody keeps trying to call me. I hope that's not bothering you folks. So what should happen is that in this blue cell, you should see some figures. But what I noticed in playing around with this, if you don't put anything here in these 2 fields, the business interruption insurance proceeds, as well as this last field, total additional federal or state credits, you don't put something, you're not going to get the potential amount that you would receive from round 2. So I'm just going to put zeros. And once you do that, the unmet need is calculated and will appear. So again, it's a really straightforward tool. Just have all your paperwork together, have your profit and loss statements for March through September 2019, as well as March through September 2020. And you should be able to get through this. And then you will jump into the application. Information about the application is here, and in a moment I will paste in the URL. So this is the FAQs for the Expanded Economic Recovery Grant Program. And then this URL is, which I'll paste in the chat, the calculator download page. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and look for Joan. Problem with 2 monitors is Zoom starts throwing windows all over the place. Adam, did you notice, did anyone join while I was sharing my screen?
Well, we have someone right now, Esther.
Okay. And there's somebody on the phone. I'm going to unmute the person on the phone.
That's Jerry or Sheila.
Oh, you recognize the number? Okay. So Adam, did I leave anything out that just in that real general overview? There is a pre-application process that folks will go through. They have to create an account, I believe, and then they, after that, start their application. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, yes. So, and I don't know how far you want to go into this pre-Joan to avoid redundancy or repetition here. But anyone who's already received a grant through ACCD, a lot of this will self-populate once they get into that. So it will know who you are, and there's some funky criteria around that. People may recall from the last round, if anyone on the call who had applied for unemployment insurance, who then went in to fill this in and used their email address, it said, oh, we know who you are. And it tried pulling that information in, saying, now give us your password. And people are like, it's the first time I've ever been on ACCD's website. I don't have a password. So there's some similar issues that still go on. So if you have, just keep this in mind, if you have filled out any online applications and you had a username tied to your email, make sure you know your password so that you can be sure to log in. That's one of the things they really flagged to us in the training over the last 2 days, is that really throws people.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about what I went over? I realize it was rather quick regarding the calculator, but I think that's really important for you to take a look at.
RT Jones zooming in.
Awesome. If you have questions, yes. Who, I don't know, is that Patricia?
That's me, yes. Well, I have a couple of questions, but for right now, that bit that you just showed, when I was filling out for some reason, I took the bottom line of the financial reliefs inputs as totaling the first 3 figures, but that's not right. Is that correct? Should be 0 if I didn't get any additional.
That's correct. And you know what, Patricia, I know Joan's time is really limited.
Yep,
so
I'm done. That's all.
Okay. Okay. But I'm not, I want to loop back to you if you've got more, but Joan might be able to answer the questions as she goes through. Joan, how are you? Thank you so much.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us. Just to give you an indication of what we covered, I went over the calculator just to give people a quick glance of the unmet need calculator. So I touched on that. And Adam touched on a little bit on the sort of the registration initial registration process.
Great.
But
Because now you're experts because you've been trained, right?
yeah, I don't know about that, but we're trying. But yeah, I'd love to turn it over to you and listen to the great announcement regarding this program.
Sure. So I'm woefully unprepared in terms of any type of PowerPoint or anything, but I'll just, why don't I just do an overview and explain, in as much detail as I can, and then you could just pose questions. Does that work for everybody?
That sounds great. And so Joan, forgive me, but this is Joan Goldstein from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and she's really the one taking the lead on this program. So thank you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Archie, and the rest of the crew here on the Resiliency team. Is that the group? Okay, excellent. So as you may already know, that the $76.7 million was appropriated in this last round of legislation that ended a couple of weeks ago. We were busy the last several weeks kind of changing the system so that we would have kind of a broader acceptance of applicants, right? So I like to call it like we right the wrongs of the first time around and work with the lessons learned. Having said that, obviously there are going to still be some businesses that may be left out, but we tried our best to try to make this as inclusive as possible while really getting it to the folks that still have ongoing unmet need. So how do we do that? On Monday, and it does look like we are going to launch Monday, we will probably include that in our COVID newsletter tonight. And what does that mean? It means at 8 o'clock on the ACCD website, the link will be live. And so businesses, whether they applied before or didn't apply before, could possibly be eligible. A good way to check out the eligibility is there's an unmet need calculator that you probably just went through, right? If I understood you correctly, that kind of gives you the idea of like how on earth do you know if there's still ongoing unmet need? And there's an easy way to check from, your revenue since COVID hit this year versus what you did last year. And there are some exceptions to that if you're a new business. And we are taking special care to make sure that if you're a new business that you may have less than 7 months of revenue last year to compare it to, but we will consider those applications as well. So the idea is that you need to have the revenue impact, and then from the revenue impact, we're asking you to subtract out some of the other benefits that you've already received, whether it's a PPP loan or an EIDL grant or another economic recovery grant, either from the agency or tax, as well as any other grant that might have been granted by the state or feds. So there was a sole proprietor grant, of which BDCC definitely helped a great deal in administering. There are other grants that other agencies had. So really the calculation is to find out, after all that's taken into consideration, the net revenue impact, less the amounts received, you'll have a net unmet need. And once you submit the application and there are attestations about, are you Vermont domiciled? Are you earning at least $22,000 a year in revenues? And once we have that and submitted, we're going to have a team of reviewers, of which the RDCs are a prominent group of helping us go through these applications. It's not first come, first serve. However, there still is, an element of time sensitivity. There's a 2-week window. These will be open. If we open Monday the 26th, we're closing on Monday, November 9th. There's a short time frame. And we do think we're going to get thousands of applications. And so the review team is essential. And what they're going to do is review the entries on the application versus supporting documentation. And the supporting documentation is extremely important, right? We are asking for your federal tax returns, state tax returns, and profit and loss statement for 2019, the whole year, and the profit and loss statement for 2020 from January through September, and all of that broken out month by month. It's a way of verifying the month's revenue in any particular month. versus what's been entered on the system. And so the reviewers are looking at that, and they're going to compare contrast, and if everything syncs up, it gets moved into an approval queue. And there were a few managers at the agency that have the permission to do the approvals. And once they're approved, they're going to be held until we finish reviewing every application. And then tax department has another grant program going for those who are sales and use and meals and rooms tax filers. And ACCD and tax will aggregate all of that unmet need. They're using the same calculation, right? So all of that unmet need, and we're going to take that number, we're going to take 76 million, which is what's been appropriated, and divide it by that need. So chances are businesses are going to get just a proportion of what their unmet need is. And we don't know what that is at this point because we don't know what the overarching demand is going to be. So that's essentially how it's going to work in the calculation and the role of the reviewers and the managers and the approvals. Once we get that pro rata factor, we go back to the applications and we're able to start making payments, which we're estimating. It's hard to estimate when we're going to be able to make the payments. It's going to, again, depend on how long it takes to get through the review queues. You know, last time around, July 6th, we opened up the applications. I think we got 1,000 applications in the first week. And it took us the whole month of July to get through those. So, you know, that it's just an indication of how labor intensive this is. But I think we have a lot of help. We've got the RDCs and their respective parties that have signed up. We have VITA. We have some people from DFR, although the Department of Finance Regulation is running the hazard pay program. They're also helping Department of Labor on adjudication. So we've lost some of our key members there. But by hook or by crook, we're going to get through the whole lot. And that's how it's going to work.
Joe, thanks. And just a distinction between this round and previous rounds. This is not, I think you touched on, this is not first come, first serve, as you described. It's going to be essentially divided up based on the demand. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we are making that distinction. It's not first come, first serve, but it doesn't mean for people to sit on their laurels. Like, definitely get the application in, because if there are issues, we will be sending back incomplete applications. So in this sense, we're very patient grant administrators. I mean, any other grant, typically, you get disqualified. So we're looking through things. If there are discrepancies or incompleteness, we send back the application to the applicant, but they really need to fill it out and correct it and get it back in before the deadline. So it really behooves people to send it in as soon as the window opens.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a question that was sent to me in the chat. It reads, we got our PPP loan through the bank. We haven't gotten any other assistance. Am I correct that we don't have an account with ACCD?
Yeah, if you didn't, that's correct. If you did not apply before with ACCD, you will be registering in the system as a new applicant.
Okay. Okay.
And it's a system, so there are things that are not that intuitive about it, and we do have a helpline, 828-1200, which will be active 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we do get a lot of calls with some discrepancies and issues. So we will have that again, ready to go to help people through that.
I recall from the training this morning, for businesses that, a very small business, for example, that maybe is challenged on their side with bookkeeping, but there are some tools, if for instance, they're not able to, use QuickBooks just to generate a P&L for those periods. There's, I think, some links to some spreadsheets that will help people.
Yes.
Put that together.
Yeah. We just put some up I believe it's in the FAQ. There's a link to a sample kind of spreadsheet of how it should look. It's basically how it should look. The more it looks like that, the more likely it's going to move right through. If it doesn't look like that and it's difficult for reviewers to understand, it's more likely to be returned. If there's any misgivings or people need help, the Center for Women in Enterprise are available to help. I know that SBDC network, I know that you've got the technical assistance network. There are avenues for businesses to go to get the assistance, even if all of those fail, to call 828-1200, and our phone unit will help people through applications. They've done it. They did it the first time around.
Okay. Another question's come up in chat. In a previous webinar, the requirement was that a business had to be domiciled in the state or primary business in the state. We have a cafe owner who lives in another state, but has a restaurant in Brattleboro and Manchester. Can they qualify because of the OR language?
Yeah, I think in that case, even though the owner is out of state, the primary business place of their business is Vermont. So
Okay.
I think that's what qualifies them.
Great. Okay. I am caught up with the questions in the chat. Are there any other questions from the group? I'll keep an eye out for.
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Could I ask? I was actually going to type all this, but it'd be quicker to just ask you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm a sole proprietor, a very small bed and breakfast. I don't pay myself anything, other than the revenue. I don't have W-2s, and although in every other way I was eligible to go through the Vermont Department of Taxes for the grant from the first round, I could not because I didn't have any W-2s. So I ended up having to go through the women and minority grant because it also disqualified me for the ACCD grant. Can I go through the Vermont Department of Taxes this time around? I mean, we pay rooms and meals taxes and everything.
Yes.
You say
yes.
that it's no longer a requirement to say how many employees you have. I mean, although I work, I don't pay myself. I just use the.
Yes, no, that is the big change from the first round. The first round required at least one employee. This time around, it does not. So you will be able, and you will be eligible through tax if that's what you prefer. It is an easier application, being that they have the filings and they have the revenue figures and everything. So yeah, you'll be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask one other really quick question about mistakes and things like that? During this whole process, I did discover that I made a mistake on my Schedule C on my 2019 tax return. So I've put in a 1040X or whatever to the IRS with the corrected Schedule C. And I've got both schedules. Is that going to be good enough for you to sort out, the one that's right and the one that's wrong? It didn't affect anything else about the taxes. It was just a stupid mistake that we made, but I wanted to correct it. So.
Yeah, I think just upload all of we want more than just the Schedule C. We want to see the entire tax return. So if you did a correction, then upload it. This time around, oh, I'm sorry. If you're filing through taxes, you don't even need to do that.
Oh, all right.
Sorry. Yeah. So the reason why, I mean, people are wondering, like, why is it so different? Well, it's just that if you're filing taxes through meals and rooms and sales and use, in your tax filing, you have sufficient information, and there's revenue figures in there of which you're paying tax on. And so, for verification purposes and audit purposes, it's pretty clear that people are not overstating revenue. In the ACCD case, we don't have any revenue figures for anybody, and that's why we're requiring all the documentation. So, but if you're going through tax, you won't need to do that. If you're not going through tax, then yes, we at ACCD would need to see everything.
Okay, well, I do have everything, but it feels like the tax route was always the best route for me from the beginning. Yeah. And I want to make this one clear thing. I did receive a small amount of money from the Women and Minority Grant, and I would put that in my calculation. It's not going to disqualify me from this. Is that correct?
Correct.
I want to be 100% sure on that.
That is correct.
Okay.
You're just correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. Anyone else? Any other questions for Joan while we still have Joan?
Stephanie's got her hand up, RT.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Joan. A follow-up question to the previous one about the owner where they're domiciled. My flag is this or straightforward new language the second round because he wasn't qualified before because of where he was domiciled? So is the or new, or has it always?
It's always been domicile. The domicile in Vermont is language that carried forward from the first grant as well.
Okay, being that you don't have to be domiciled.
No, you have to be domiciled in Vermont.
The webinar slide said domiciled in Vermont or have your primary business in Vermont. And the or caught my eye because he is not domiciled in Vermont. And so I'm wondering, is that a change from the first round?
No, it's the same. It's domiciled or your primary place of business.
Thank you.
I mean, the domicile questions are extremely tricky. And in fact, what we end up doing is we actually have tax professionals analyze it because it is not a straightforward question for many people. So I would just say apply. The reviewers, if they stumble on it, it gets bumped up and then we get additional help. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
So RT, if there's, I'll just pause if in case there's other questions, but Joan, for this group, there may be a lot of smaller businesses, and what you have here on the call with us, a lot of folks that work in support of other businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I know from the training that it's really important to pay attention to what kind of documents you're uploading. So if you're a sole proprietor, or if you're, let's say, if you're an LLC, but you're a single member,
Mm-hmm.
or a sole proprietor, making sure that you really have all those, pay attention to those things, because that's what's going to get kicked back, is if you don't have identified correct documents that align with the type of entity you say you are.
Correct. So, you know, it's like we look at the entries on the application and we compare it to the tax returns as an example. And if you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, you know, you get paid based on your social security number. I mean, there are instructions, but if there's, you know, care and feeding and some hand holding, again, you could call the helpline and we'll take you through it. But it's basically to pay attention to the areas of the application that ask for basically what applicants are doing, and they're putting in information as if they're filling out a W-9. They're doing it electronically, and it's just very key because if they don't put in the right information, it's going to delay them getting a check. You know, we need to have the social security lined up and the address, the legal mailing address.
Stephanie, I know you just put that in the chat, but why don't you go ahead and ask it since you're there?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm unmuted. One of my businesses is asking ballpark estimate as to the ratio of unmet need that will be met, the magical question.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, or the $76 million question. I don't know. I mean, just to give like a frame of reference, I know that New Hampshire, when they did their grant program, they ended up paying out 17%. You know,
of the unmet need.
Yeah. But I think we're being very conservative about what people have to subtract. Like, I think, you know, we're telling people subtract out the PPP loan, subtract out the EIDL grant. This way they're subtracting more. The unmet need is actually less. And I know New Hampshire only subtracted out like 50% of those benefits. So and they had businesses project losses. So I think all of those things led to an unbelievable, you know, outpouring of, okay, we're going to need X, and it may not even have been the right projection. So we're doing this on actuals. We're subtracting all the previous help. So we think we're doing this in the most conservative fashion, meaning that we're going to pay out people the most we could possibly pay out. And we're also hoping, it's a hope, it's also a thought that some of the unused monies that exist elsewhere might be able to be channeled toward this program. It's by no means a slam dunk, but there is, you know, movement afoot throughout the whole enterprise about all these other grant programs that were out there during the year since COVID struck and we had the CARES Act, in November, there'll be some reckoning about, how much was used, how much is unused. Can we get some of that to help fund this? That's why it's so key to get what is that aggregate unmet need, so that hopefully we'll have a shot at being able to boost that amount, but it's not a slam dunk. I just raised it because we do expect an overwhelming amount of applications.
Joan, do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Maybe two. Another one, another one just popped in. We have a participant who has a subchapter S corporation. Will they need to supply personal, stakeholder, or owner taxes?
So, typically what happens, the S Corp is like an 1120S, right? And then sometimes people would send the K1s. I would say err on the side of providing more information rather than less. Having said that, we're not doing a personal financial statement analysis. We're not going that far, but we just want to get a sense of the organization. So it's really, the 1120S is the most important thing. Okay. I think before people uploaded it because it was all part of their tax return, and it was
easier to just upload the entire document than separate it.
Exactly. And then it was harder last time in terms of review because we had to ascertain whether or not they were truly employees or not. So but I just think as complete as possible on the tax documents.
And this one's, well, hopefully it's an easy one. Will this grant money need to be paid out prior to 12/31/2020, or will it extend into 2021?
So the state has an obligation so far, and I don't know what happened in Congress, if there's any movement on the new stimulus, but so far the state is obligated to disperse these funds by December 30th. And so that's what we're endeavoring to do, is disperse it. The subrecipients of the money do not have to spend it down by December 30th. The way that this grant program was designed is that it's designed on revenue loss, and the revenue loss has to be during this window of March through December 30th, 2020. And so we've established that just by virtue of the fact of asking for that information about this loss that was generated from March.
Okay.
So they're okay.
Okay. All right. I don't see any more questions. I don't see any more hands up. Joan, thank you so much. It's formally
You're welcome. And Monday is the day. So another just shout out. Last time around in July, we had an overwhelming call volume on that first day. Don't give up. Tell your folks not to give up on us. A lot of people gave up the phone. They didn't want to wait that long. If it's so bad on that Monday, try again on Tuesday. This is the 828-1200 number. I just wanted to do that chat. Yeah, it's 802-828-1200.
Okay.
We have a call center that's set up for it, and they'll forward the calls directly to an ACCD person. But we got inundated that first time around, and if there are heavy call volume, just tell your folks to be patient with us. We will get back to each and everybody.
Wonderful.
Yeah, John, I'll echo that in that, we had a lot of compliments that we heard over that time period, that they couldn't believe how accessible and how responsive ACCD was through that line. So those people probably weren't there the first day, but right after that, you guys really did a great service.
Great. That's great to hear. And let's keep up the good work, and good luck, everybody. And thanks so much for helping.
All right. Well, thanks again on behalf of the folks on this call to Joan Goldstein, Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Wow. A lot of
Thanks, RT. Bye.
Right, have a great afternoon. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, you too. Good weekend.
You as well. Okay. I didn't have anything else slated for the agenda, but happy to entertain any questions that folks might have, or any other, from my colleagues, any other thoughts and comments that they think should be shared. Otherwise, I'm happy to.
RT, I've got one. So on the income, just be careful, everybody, if you're working with folks. They tell you that you have to consider the grants as income, which you do, You're going to have to pay taxes on it. But for the purposes of this application, you don't need to count it. If you don't have a standard profit and loss and you end up in the Excel sheet where you're including your income and your expenses, you don't need to include the previous state grants in your income. So it does count against you as your unmet need. So don't get confused here. It goes against you for your unmet need for sure. But when you're submitting your profit and loss through an Excel sheet, or if even it's on your normal profit and loss, it's not going to be counted against you in the calculation of what your revenue is. So that's probably very confusing and probably not worthy of me bringing this up, because it's a very nuanced piece that we learned about today in the training. So when you go to fill out the original spreadsheet, the Excel sheet that RT just referenced, when you go, you have to put in all of your grants into that, right? So that's going to come off of what your unmet need is. Later in the process, you're going to be uploading either a profit and loss document, or if you don't have a profit and loss document, there's a different Excel sheet that you can then put in your revenue and your expenses. This does not determine your grant. It's so that reviewers can verify the two pieces back and forth. So just know that you don't need to include as your earned revenue the grant when you get to that stage if you're putting it in an Excel. If it's already on your profit and loss, it's fine. They're going to just be taking that piece of paper and looking at it and saying, all right, this jives with what we've got over here. And they already know if it's a grant that they will not have to calculate that.
Thank you, Adam. Thank
Probably
you.
created more questions and clarity. Apologies if so, but happy to take that deeper with anyone who wants.
Yeah, so a couple questions in the chat. The question is, can we fill out unmet need calculator ahead of time, or must we do it once calculator goes live on Monday? The calculator that I referenced at the top of the session is available for download. I posted that URL. I'll do it again in a moment in the chat. You can download that now and just use it as a tool, really to understand, if you do have an unmet need based on that calculation. So it's really just a tool to help you. The next question is, does money received through Everyone Eats count as revenue? Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Let Stephanie take that one.
Yeah.
It was a really good day today. It does not count. Everyone Eats money, NIFT money. Those have all been deemed money in exchange for goods and services. So you do not have to count that in your non-duplication funds.
Oh, that's great. Great news. Yay. Yeah. Great job. That's great. Okay. I'm just glancing at the participant window. I don't see any hands up. Yeah, so in summary, this opens up on Monday. We're here to help. Folks like Stephanie, they're there to help. Please reach out if you have any questions. Also, the phone number that Commissioner Goldstein referenced, the 802-828-1200. But thank you for joining us. Check out the frequently asked questions. There's a lot of really good information there, as well as downloading the calculator to just give you a sense for where you stand in terms of unmet need.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
And it's off topic, but I'm just wondering if you all could talk a little bit about the welcome wagon, as I'm getting a lot of people wanting to figure out how we're going to retain people that are moving here. Is that too offbeat for you to mention?
I'm going to have to lean to one of my colleagues because I'm not.
I don't really have any of the relevant staff on here. I mean, I can kind of answer it, but I'm probably not the right person to answer it just because sort of how it works. I mean, the quiet version, the simple version is we are, and always have been, but now sort of with a little bit more intentionality around the volunteer networking, we are welcoming people who are referred to us and who have arrived in the region and just figuring out ways to sort of plug them into a referral network. And so Welcome Wagon platform allows us to add sort of a volunteer buddy resident. What we've been doing in the Deerfield Valley, because they already had sort of an outreach to newcomers, mailing and all sorts of things planned, is sort of adding that to their outreach as a way to sort of organize that volunteer connecting. So we haven't sort of, thrown it out there to the larger world because we're kind of piloting it, to see how we're going to manage having a whole bunch of inquiries and, making sure we're frankly keeping up. If 20 people say we're new, we need help, but I don't have 20 volunteers, we haven't done anyone any favors. So we're really just being kind of quiet about it. But that means anyone you come across and meet, please send, our way. Don't stop doing what you already do out there, but please send them our way.
Yeah, Jennifer, we've got Casey on, and then also Gretchen, who participated in the Valley program. I don't know if either of you have anything additional to say.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Jen said about we are kind of slow rolling it out just to make sure that we're doing this the right way. That being said, if you know anyone that would be a fantastic host for new people, especially we have some new people coming to Brattleboro, and so if you have some great hosts in the area that you want to recommend them to, I would advise them to sign up. We sent out our first newsletter for that and have made a few connections already. So it's been great, and we're looking forward to seeing it grow.
Awesome.
You're muted, Gretchen. Or we can't hear you. Try again.
You're unmuted. No, can't hear you.
It's that rural broadband.
Yeah, shoot. Sorry, Gretchen.
So Gretchen, in the Valley, what they've done is they've created postcards. They've done some collateral. They're working with the realtors in the region so that when anyone buys a home, they're getting a postcard. It directs them to the Welcome Wagon. They're creating some folks to be the Welcome Wagon. Are we calling them? Are they ambassadors? What's the term?
We're calling them hosts.
Hosts. So the Welcome Wagon hosts that are paired up. So they've got their own effort that they're working with. As a bigger explanation, Welcome Wagon was a chapter that started in the Burlington, Chittenden area. So there's now a chapter here in the Windham region. I think there's one in the Northeast Kingdom. And really the idea is just to create a structure in which these hosts can get paired up with people who are interested in moving or recently moved. So it seems like a really a great program to reinforce that recruitment and retention that we all know is so important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stephanie may have something else, RT.
No.
No? Okay.
No. Okay. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a fabulous weekend. It's oddly warm. I don't know what the weekend forecast is, but it just feels strange to me. But thanks to everybody for joining, and take a look at the FAQs for this next program or expanded program, as well as the calculator. But have a great day.